So I stopped by this donut shop, and I got a box of donut holes, a newspaper, and a cup of coffee. I set all my stuff down at the table. When I came out, there was some guy in a suit sitting there at my table, and I thought it was just so weird. I came up and I just went up to the table. I didn't say anything, and he kind of looked at me weird, opened up the box of donut holes, and popped one in his mouth. I was like, whoa! So I grabbed one and I popped one in my mouth. And then he just looked at me, and we ended up being like two gladiators trying to finish off these the quickest, right? And it comes down to the last two. He pops one in his mouth, I pop the last one in my mouth, and he just huffs and walks out of there. Neither of us has said anything to each other. Wow, that was so weird. I picked up my newspaper, and underneath my newspaper was my box of donuts. Oh! You know you're hypnotizable if that thing moves. I'm just kidding. Everyone's hypnotizable.
You're in trouble.
There's a lot of misconceptions about what hypnosis is, and I just want to talk about those a little bit first real quick. The biggest misconception is that hypnosis is like mind control. I hear that all the time, but it's just not true. In fact, like even when I'm doing stage hypnosis, if someone doesn't want to be doing all that fun stuff, they won't do it. They'll go back in the audience to watch. In my office, if I had someone hypnotized in my chair and told them, go stand your head in the corner, go like this, they would just say, you know, that's not a good idea, or they'd just give me what to do it. Because we always have that sense of self-preservation, that sense of self-control. It's not about losing control, it's about actually giving you more control over whatever it is that we're trying to help improve. The next misconception that I hear a lot is that someone could tell some deep dark secret through their hypnosis, which just isn't true at all. I could never get anyone's PIN number, or, you know, find out any deep dark secret from their past or anything like that. Some people also think that you could get stuck in hypnosis, which there's no way. In thousands of years of people practicing hypnosis, no one's ever been stuck in hypnosis. In fact, if I was to hypnotize somebody and I went back to the donut store to get another box of donut holes, they would just simply come up out of the trance or the relaxed state, or they would fall asleep and then wake up. Because it is on the way to sleep, it's not actually sleep, and it's not actually an unconscious state. So the stages of hypnosis include 5 different stages. The first stage is the thinking stage, and this is where most insomniacs get stuck because they're worrying about their day or the next day. The next stage is the wishful thinking stage, where we're kind of daydreaming about being on the beach with George Clooney or whoever it may be. And then we go into the hypnoidal state. And in that state, it's a hyper-aware state of consciousness. So if you're in that state and all of your senses are heightened. So you can hear someone mowing the lawn like 50 miles away. You can hear kids laughing, or birds chirping that you didn't notice before you entered that state. Even your kinesthetics, and your taste, and your smell, every sense is heightened. So if you get an itch when you're falling asleep and you're in the hypnoidal state, and you tell yourself, oh, I don't want to scratch that itch because it's going to keep me up for a few seconds longer, it's going to turn into 100 different itches, and you're going to have to scratch them all. That's
so bad.
So everybody has to go through hypnosis, or the hypnoidal state, to get into the theta and delta states of sleep. This is the alpha state. Theta and delta states of sleep, and then REM. However, there's some controversy saying that REM is actually the hypnoidal state. Again, so maybe it's... So you'll never be unconscious, you'll never be out of control. Some people also think that certain people are unhypnotizable, but that's not true at all either. Everybody's hypnotizable. As long as you have high intelligence, you're able to imagine and focus and concentrate, you would be a good participant in hypnosis or self-hypnosis. We start with a blank slate from birth, and we only have 2 fears. Those are the fears of falling and the fears of loud noises. For some reason, my daughter didn't seem to have that fear of falling until she was 4. But they say that the only 2 fears that we have, the only 2 knowns that we have from birth, are the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. 12% of the mind is conscious. And it looks like I'm drawing the frontal lobe of the brain here, but that's not what it is. The conscious part of the mind is actually the cerebral cortex, which is just a very thin layer around the brain. And that's 12%. 88% is unconscious or subconscious. The 12% is responsible for logic and reasoning, and this is what guides our willpower. The 88% is where all of our habits and all of our like automatic stuff, like blinking, walking, tying our shoes, all that stuff is just mundane, and it doesn't need to jump up that 12% of our mind with daily activities like that. Even smoking can get in here if it's been done for long enough. This is also where positive and negative subconscious knowns everything else that's learned. Does anyone have anything that they've been working on that they'd like to share? I can give an example of that.
Not in Europe. I do recombine
Spanish. To learn the second language.
Okay, so that's a little bit different. It is something that can, for memory enhancement and things like that, but for this purpose, this
a lot of people like that, you know, and a lot of
habits, yeah.
anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay, so let's say stage fright. Just
One I don't know.
what do you have? What is it that you have?
Oh, God. Driving down here was.
Driving
Because
anxiety.
I wasn't driving. I can drive. Nobody else knows how to drive.
Okay.
Especially on curvy roads or at high. I'm godly afraid of heights and curvy roads and driving.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, when I was a kid, I had an alcoholic uncle who would drink and drive, and he lived up in the mountains, and he would drive like 2 times the speed limit. It freaked me out when I was a kid. That would create a negative subconscious known for being in a car with someone else as a kid. Then maybe as I got older, I was in the car with my grandma, and she swerved over into the wrong lane, and oncoming traffic was coming at us, and she was kind of out of it or whatever. That would reinforce that negative subconscious known about being in a car with someone else. Let's say one more time, as an adult, I was in a car accident with someone who was drunk or something like that, and maybe I had a couple of ribs that got broken or whatever. That would create, once again, reinforce that negative subconscious known. In psychology, this is called conditioning. Like Pavlovian conditioning or operant conditioning, Skinner. Let's take another person who, whenever they went on car rides, let's say the only way that their parents could get them to fall asleep was if they went on a car ride. They would have a very early positive subconscious known that 12% of the time she would be able to willpower herself to be okay in the car. But 88% of the time, it's just going to be an automatic thing. Up until about the ages of 6 and 9, we're suggestible to everything. So if someone says there's an Easter bunny, we'll believe it. Santa Claus, we'll believe it. If someone says that that sign Falling Rock up in the mountains is dedicated to a Native American who died there, we would believe it. My uncle actually told me that. I was before that age, so it's right. So, up until this age, we are suggestible to everything. However, once we hit right around that age range, we've been fooled one too many times. And we start creating a filter, which is called the critical part of the mind, which allows us to accept or reject information depending on our life script.